Yep, got it.
Okay, great, thanks. And so before we get started on our topic of discussion, I want to know if there are any announcements. Frank?
So in the fun saga of climate literacy, it's a saga by definition. We have, because of the listening sessions, really asked climate literacy to go into some new domains that historically we had not gone since 2009 when we released the second guide. We tried to make a super climate literacy guide, and that didn't work. So we have just last Friday agreed to a new strategy, which is there will no longer be a single guide. There will be a series of guides. And in that series of guides, there will be a knowledge framework, which is more akin to what we had in 2009. It'll be a different framework for knowledge. But when we tried to solve for skills and abilities framework, in addition to knowledge framework, the reviewing body, which is NASA, NOAA, NSF, Department of Energy, EPA, and keep on going, we're like, that's just not, we don't have credibility there. So how are we going to review that? So just a note, it's taken longer. It's complicated. It's hard. So I tried to be ambitious and get it done as fast as I could. But I think we've written an incredible science framework. We've written this incredible skills framework. But now we're splitting them into two, and then misconceptions. I mean, misinformation, how to deal with misinformation and disinformation. That's probably a third guide. How to deal with climate anxiety and emotions related to climate issues and learning. That's probably a fourth guide. How to incorporate indigenous knowledge or knowledges into climate literacy, maybe a fifth guide. So just giving you a sense that it's, yeah, right. I see you, Katie. From your perspective at Clean, the knowledge framework will probably be the most like what we have on the Clean portal right now.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense to split them up, and I like these different topics. I was just saying that's a lot of work on your end too to make all these guides.
Well, I mean,
and then how is it going to be put out there in the public? Because then I think people will say, oh, there's just too much stuff, and throw out their hands. And
well, so I mean, I think the quick answer to that, given where we are in this meeting, is that if you're trying to build knowledge, you'll use the knowledge guide. If you're trying, I think it's more akin to the excellence in environmental education guides that NAAE has. They have a series of guides, all customized and built for different purposes. We're actually working with them on their excellence in environmental education for climate action guide right now, which if you haven't seen is under review. So I'll put a link to that. But I think that's, so it's, I'm using the analogy of a toolbox, Tamara, that, you know, the knowledge guide, which is kind of what we did in 2009, is a tool. What we need to create is a box that the guides sit in, and you organize it in a nice, easy way, like wrenches, so that, you know, if you want to grab this wrench or that wrench, it's easy. But that's kind of the direction we've come to, because the field of all the practitioners and learners asked us to build a much more complicated approach to climate literacy than we had in 2009. So
would all of these, then, given the reluctance of the various groups that are part of the vetting process, would they objected, they said that they didn't feel like they had the credentials to review all of this content. Will they now just vet parts of it?
So the current plan is that the Subcommittee on Global Change Research will review, probably starting this week, the knowledge framework. That's like, we recognize that, we know how to do that. It'll be heavily based on the National Climate Assessment, fifth assessment. We've already done that work. So that should actually go relatively quickly. It was the other sections that were skills and abilities, misinformation, indigenous knowledge. I mean, they were just like, ooh, that's just stuff that's just not us. And so what we're likely to do is, and this is important where I think clean comes in, is ocean literacy, when it came out, had one agency and 3 other major organizations that cared about ocean education. That's probably, and they all had the same level of designation. I think the skills and ability one is going to be more like that, where different groups, where if UCAR wanted to come, we're in on that too. And Turk, or, you know, a university or an NGO wanted to join, like Clio Institute, wanted to join us, same level billing as an agency like NOAA. That's more like the skills and ability authorizing. And we have a meeting Friday morning to figure out the authorizing review process for skills and ability. But the skills, I mean, the knowledge one will be the subcommittee on global change research, and then agency, I mean, other entities will join the same exact language like we did in 2009. So it's complicated, but I mean, that's where the work is. So we're going to go where will be complicated too. Sorry, that was a lot more minutes than I expected, but you know, it's an important part of our work. So sorry for taking so long.
Okay, Jim?
We need to give you thanks on these. This is really great news. This is really good. And maybe feedback from the K-12 world is now there are schools are having 3-4 classes on climate change, each some on action, some on social justice, some on science, some on language arts. I mean, this is a big topic. Not every school is going to give it a huge amount of time, but some are, and some will be 2 or 10 hours a week. But some, you know, you guys are right on the money. This is a major societal issue. It's not a one-shot deal. Thank you.
So Jim, the way I've been saying it is, to deal with climate change, historically, we've talked about transforming the energy sector, the building sector, the food sector, the water sector, every sector of society except the education sector. And I think what we're seeing, what Jim, your point makes, is that we're now starting to see the transformation of the education sector as it relates to climate. And so our structure should be anticipating transformation as opposed to just tweaking. And so I think that I appreciate that point.
Okay, thanks. Gina?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as a general announcement for everyone, that I am still working on building the fall schedule for these calls, and it's almost October, but just as a reminder, if anyone has any suggestions about topics or presenters, I'm always very open to hearing those. And I want these calls to be beneficial for everyone here. I don't want them to just be prescribed by Clean for any reason. It's for you. So if you have anyone that you want to hear from or a topic that you want to hear about, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I will make sure it gets put on the calendar for this fall. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, well, if not, then we'll move on to our Carolyn.
Sorry, I said I'm having some internet issues, so it wouldn't go up. So we have our official flyers to go out about the upcoming Florida Association of Science Teachers Conference. I sent out a thing to all of Clean membership, but yeah, we're going to be doing a couple climate-based workshops and presentations. So if anyone, if anyone wouldn't mind sort of spreading the word, letting your networks who might be in the way know, I'd appreciate it. And I did hear that there was a kitten sighting. Let me.
That's too cute.
A
How old?
little.
I think she's almost 8 weeks. They're very underweight. Their mom ran out of milk early, so they came in and they were like like half, 2/3 of the weight that they should be at that age. But they're fattening up nicely. If I think most people have heard me talk about this before, but I foster kittens. So I've always got a new batch coming in with God, who knows what health issue this time.
Gina?
Oh wow, I just completely. Oh, Carolyn, I lost my thought for a second because I got distracted by the cuteness. Will you be sharing that on social media at all?
We have so we have the FAST conference that will be at October 19th to the 21st. And it's all shared on I don't know about places like Instagram. I'm just on LinkedIn because I'm an old person. But we've shared that. And then we also have one following up in Tampa with the Anshin Center. I guess I'll probably send out a message to the listserv about that as well. But yeah, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn or whatever, I'll be sharing all of those.
Okay. I'm always happy to promote on clean social media, and I try to, look through our feed every once in a while and see if there's things that we can reshare, but this specifically it's like would be a good opportunity.
Yeah, where is clean on social media?
We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, I don't use Twitter.
I don't want to call it X, I'll tell you that.
I know, I'm begrudgingly saying that.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. So you used to say you would Twitter something or tweet something, and what do you do? Exit?
I don't see Clean Network on Facebook. Is it?
We are.
It might be the climate literacy.
Climate lit, I think, is the Facebook.
Yeah, climate lit. There it is. Or that's what Twitter is. Is that Facebook too, Gina?
Man, I get them confused. It's either at climate lit or at CleanNet. It's one of the two.
Oh, it might be CleanNet on Facebook. Wait, I have it written down because I always forget it. I'll pull it up and I can put them in the chat.
Oh, there it
here.
is. Okay, I see it. I am now.
There it is.
I am now following. Are you the one who does the social media? Because I can just share the post from Cleo.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just another way to promote it because I know you have been. I just always feel really happy when people share stuff on the listserv. I think it's a great tool to use, and I'm happy that people are using it. And I can also help promote on social media too. So I'll try to keep an eye on that stuff.
Hey, Gina, have you ever talked with Bruce Moravchik about who's the program manager for the NOAA Planet Stewards, about all the listservs that he moves through?
Well, we connect
Gina.
with him on the Planet Stewards listserv. Does he have other listservs too?
So
pretty sure Clean is where I get the Planet Stewards newsletter from.
Yeah, he sends the Planet Stewards newsletter to Clean, and we also send him things to promote like our events and stuff to him. He's got a form now you can fill out for that.
I know, but what I'm talking about is how he places Planet Stewards newsletter in Clean. He also places it in a lot of other places.
Oh, gotcha.
So of all the people I've ever met who place things in other people's newsletters, he's got a better handle on all those other newsletters. Like getting everyone to come to your newsletter is one strategy. He does the opposite. He puts his newsletter in everyone else's news feeds. So we may want to have, we haven't done this in a long time, but how do you market this content? And there's lots of channels. What are the channels? What are the hashtags? What are the newsletters? And there's no one ring that rules them all. It doesn't work like that. So Bruce has just he does this like it's not bifurcated, but this, I don't know how many ways he goes, but multi-path.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't realize. I knew he was in Clean, but I didn't realize he did that elsewhere as well. And that's part of why, I know he's got a wide reach. So that's a lot of why we try to send things to him. But that's cool. Actually, that might be worth Gina like setting up a conversation with him. Or Gina's been doing these meetings with some NOAA folks, like social media meetings to coordinate with NOAA Education and Climate Program Office. You could always see if he's interested. I guess the newsletters are a little bit different than social media, but you could always see if he wants to join one of those or something too.
Yep.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point, Katie. I just made a note for myself to circle back on that. But yeah, we are always looking for new listservs to promote our events on and stuff. So that's a really good idea, Frank. Bruce is well connected.
Yes, he is.
I mean, there's so many, right? But I mean, the education market is incredibly hard to connect to. So anything you can do to activate in many of them, and if you get, oh, I got it 3 ways, that actually is good, not a bad.
Okay, any more announcements or requests? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our topic of discussion today. So most of you have probably heard about the ruling in Montana for the case brought by the youth of Montana on climate. And Gina very kindly included the link to the article, so I was able to read it before this conversation. But the youth, and I thought it interesting that the youth range in age from 5 to 22. It's just how much input can a 5-year-old have? If it was done on their behalf, that's an interesting legal question for me. But the judge ruled that the state of Montana, in the way they give out permits to the fossil fuel industry, is unconstitutional. I'm assuming constitutional with respect to the state of Montana. In terms of it impacting the health and well-being of these youth. And it's a very interesting decision. I mean, in reading through the article, there were like many cases that youth bring on climate change, and most of them get dismissed. And this one was an exception, and now is going to go to potentially to be appealed to the Supreme Court of Montana. But I thought it's interesting at how long this took. When I did look at the initial, there was a link in the article to the initial legal action. It was from 2020. And now it's 2023. And I'm not exactly sure how that impacts the law that allows them to give these permits. So anyway, that's just my introduction to what the topic is. Anybody have any thoughts on this in terms of the fact that it actually happened, or what might the consequences be, or what the next steps might be? And does everybody can put the link in the chat if anybody?
I put the Washington Post article in the chat, and
Okay.
I think I don't have any specific thoughts about this, but I think it would be really interesting to see how what the effects of this will be. Oh, and there's an NPR article. Thanks, Frank.
I just put the NPR one because the Washington Post has a paywall on that article for me. I mean, it's intriguing, right? Because one of the things we know young people, when they focus on climate as an issue that's important to them, obviously, they want action by governments and businesses. Like that's part of the ask. But there's another ask that's interesting to us, which is they want to be educated on this topic. And so one of the threads that has bopped around our community in different ways is, if there's ever a penalty against fossil fuel companies for delaying action through dismissiveness and misinformation, that's coming, is what's the penalty? the penalty is a lot of money. Where's the money due? And so some of the thoughts is actually it pays for education. And, you know, billions and billions and billions of dollars that could be in the penalty side of that. Anyway,
It might
you know,
also be directed towards solutions too.
and some would say education is a solution. I was just with Tony Lazarowitz at Climate Week last week, and he gave an amazing talk, and he opened it with a quote from Abraham Lincoln, that something like this is that public sentiment is everything. With it, you can do anything. Without it, you can do nothing. And so the reason why fossil fuels companies invested in denial and delay and dismission and confusion campaigns was to, you know, confuse people. And why would you want to do that? That would be because you want to undermine public sentiment on this issue. So, you know, and just these things are all connected, right? And so I do think it'd be interesting to see if anything, the youth in this, what did they want? Besides, you know, the actions in the states, have they ever said anything about education? What education?
I don't think that, I mean, I don't know what, I don't know that there was a link to the ruling. There was a link to the action. So I don't know, and the ruling wouldn't specifically say that. The ruling would be very narrow in terms of what the actual call was for, declaring that law or regulation unconstitutional. And that's all the legal action would I mean, the law is very, very narrow in that way. But your comment on political will, Frank, it goes back to our paper on feedback loops.
Oh yeah.
And so one of the things that was interesting to me in this article is how many actions are being taken, how many actions, was on the order of 5,500, I think, that have been submitted across the United States, and this one was a positive result. So that to me looks like a huge wall that needs to be climbed in order to build that political will. I mean, I think that the biggest outcome of this is building that broader political will towards action, because you know, politicians will listen to people who vote. And if that political will, the people that voted, and I don't know if you've followed this, but one of the things that I followed is that in 2016, if you tried to find on the presidential platforms what they wanted to convey to their, you know, the people that they were trying to get to vote for them, climate change wasn't even on the radar screen. You could probably get to the bottom of the list. In 2020, there were town halls about climate change. And that was a shift to building that political. This is another action that these kids, I mean, so ages 5 to 22. So, you know, at least a third of them can vote at this point. And so that those people are becoming of age to be part of that political force. It's just a slow, long process. I agree that education is a key element to it. I can find that, I find that even my classes, my undergraduate students who are business majors, all of my students are business majors, and really educating them into how climate change impacts the businesses and their careers. That's another way of building political will, is seeing where it impacts those particular people, my particular students. I was also interested in that there's also actually many more cases internationally than there are in the United States, and that more of them have positive results. I was really surprised to hear that too. I wasn't aware that there was, I'm going to try to find it in the article. So the cumulative number of climate cases around the world has doubled in the last 5 years. Youth-led lawsuits in the United States is an uphill battle already. 14 cases have been dismissed, and about 3/4 of the approximately 2,200 ongoing or concluded cases were filed before courts of the United States. But of the international ones, according to the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment, about half of them, more than half of them, have had favorable outcomes. So here we have 2,200 cases, and we have this one positive, and they have lots and lots of cases, and about half of them have. I don't know what those actions are called for, what actions are called for in those cases, but it's an interesting difference.
Yeah, and I wonder it must have been a mix of a lot of things, but I wonder what was it that made this particular case successful? Probably a variety of factors.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, sorry, Jim, I'm gonna jump in here. From what I read, and yeah, one or two of these articles, I thought that one of the things that made this particular case successful was the very specific amendment in the state constitution that gives people the right to like a healthy environment, basically, or something. Like, I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but Montana has kind of a unique an amendment in their constitution that specifically gives people the right to having like I said, some sort of like healthy environment or something like that. And that is where
Clean
this
and
was.
helpful. The actual term is clean and healthful environment.
Yeah, so that's where this one was more successful than other cases have been in the past, because these people were arguing that climate change is disrupting their environment. And so, yeah, it's interesting because I don't know how much, like, this case being successful is good, but I don't know how much it really helps other cases when you don't have that specific amendment in a constitution to sort of say, like, you have a right to this. It's been more challenging in other places.
It goes to my point about how specific legal cases have to be. So Jim, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you. And am I coming through okay? Obviously, I'm having some technical problems right now.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Good.
you.
Thank you. So absolutely, there's absolutely the question of the legal and what comes next and all this. I think I'll touch on what I think most of us would also catch is the relevance this has for us in education, as we, as Frank is also bringing up, having the rest of the federal government get it that young people are very important, and if you're missing them, you're missing a whole lot of this. And we in education are the direct links of adults to young people, and I think there's a lot of relevance to this of the power that young people have, especially on this issue of pulling the heartstrings and the reality. And part of, if we have a democratic society, it doesn't mean just who are of voting age. I think it's also that, we're looking at the demographic, or at least a demographic within American society that most is eager to take action on climate change and want to learn about it and do things. I mean, so, it's not, of course, it's not just young people suing for climate action. It's in general, climate action has been a very tough thing in the courts. And it's the young people who broke through, right? I mean, this is a breakthrough, and there will be more breakthroughs, and a dam is cracking open. But I think it's just, I guess what I want to just bring out is the question of young people as essential in climate action. And that means educators being part of it and so on. And again, I get to work every day now with students, and the feedback of they want to be taken seriously. They demand to be taken seriously. To be given the power is something that changes everything for them. Not just hearing about how awful it is, but we're going to be heard. And maybe also, Frank, when I get a chance with you, it's like they really love the idea of working with those in the federal agencies who care and want to do things. They love you. They'd love to work with that. I mean, we really got to get you guys together and let people know, like, just what you mean to young people, what you're doing in the federal agencies. And that's why a lot of our actions are designed to work with the best of the federal agencies. So, I mean, it's cracking open, but young people, I think, are going to be a huge part of us taking on this, to getting places with climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. There's another consideration here that I think. So often a lot of times why people don't want to touch teaching climate is because young people that they fear that educating on climate is indoctrination, it's propaganda, it's controversial. right? And and part of where that comes from is stuff like this, where young people sue the government, and whether it's state government, city government, county government, national government. In the Guardian article, the Juliana case is still moving forward. It's not dismissed. It's just, hasn't been brought to trial yet. They've just been going through procedural measures. That's against us. They're suing us. So, but what's interesting about it is, and I've long felt that education isn't advocacy. It's not. In fact, it's almost the opposite of advocacy. But we as a community haven't done the greatest job of describing when one ends and the other one begins. And I don't do advocacy on purpose, because I'm an educator, not an advocate. But I think we sometimes stay so far away from action or what young people with knowledge and skill might do, that we kind of don't do education service. So there's just something there that I think down the road, maybe it's a guide that we have to get to. I don't know, a climate literacy guide of, how does education stay away from advocacy, or why is it not advocacy? I wouldn't name it that way, right? Because that would just be problematic. But, we're definitely not, there are programs that are doing advocacy that are in our community. Alliance for Climate in the climate emergency, they're definitely doing advocacy, but they're also doing education. So I don't know, there's something there that I think we need to get clear, because I think this action, I think, Tamara, you even said it, like a 5-year-old. Is a 5-year-old really calling, I want to sue, or are they as an adult behind them and ushering them forward? And if it's really a 5-year-old who's taken their right and used it in combination with others, that's their right. And, as opposed to they're a puppet, right? That's usually where the stuff shows up. So I think there's just, in our community, getting cleaner, sorry to be on the pun, about where these all dimensions live and work, and where each of us is on that continuum, is a good thing for us to do.
Jim?
Yeah, and so Frank, very important points indeed. Fortunately, we have a ton of educators doing a ton of different things. With climate change, there's a million things to be done. That means a million things that can be done. So on the question of action, the question, whether we call it action and advocacy and all these different things, is there's so many things to be done, that, I guess what I could speak to is, look, I'm kind of, when I work with students, for one, we don't hide the fact we're multi-generational. I don't hide the fact I'm the mentor to the student, one of the mentors at Climate Club DC or Mobile Climate Science Lab. There's no, people want to see, am I a part of it? Absolutely. And there's our retirees at Lawrence Livermore Lab, they're the mentors, right? And learning, we bring in guests. We're not hiding that. So go ahead and hit us on it. And maybe I'd also say, in places like Washington, D.C. and California, this is not controversial. Or it's a very small percentage of the population would have any blowback toward it. But we have a society that's dividing up about all kinds of things. It's almost like it's controversial whether you should use toilet paper or not. I don't think it should be controversial to teach kids good hygiene, but it's pretty close to it about some of the anti-vaccine and the masks, or the level of, we just don't want people even wearing masks, not alone is it a choice. But I guess the one is, I will speak to being very cognizant of the question of the advocacy of designing actions that should not be controversial and let people go after us. Is, when we're going to the Capitol and making their lighting less energy efficient, so it's controversial now to be working against federal deficit, because basically you're saying, those that want to keep the lighting incandescent is saying we want to waste we want to waste energy at the Capitol. We want to spend money where it shouldn't be spent. We want to waste it. I mean, so it's kind of like really going, thinking, and it's not. We're not advocating changing the laws. We're going to the Capitol and saving money at the Capitol. You see what I'm saying? It's actually really very cognizantly, and trying to give you all in the federal government a little bit of leeway of like, these are educators who are doing something that is should be totally, it's not controversial, it's not political. We're just following the law that says that the federal government should stop wasting damn money on energy and go with efficiency. This is where the future is. This is where the jobs are. This is the technology are. Or are we going to give it all to China? Right? I mean, there's all that kind of stuff, right? We're advocating letting China take over on the technological leadership of the country, and who's got the jobs? Okay, that's. I think that's a controversial issue. So anyway, I'm just kind of giving the, I just that many of us are deliberately staying away from political advocacy. Our action is not political advocacy. And it doesn't mean that we're against those that are, right? We call our sisters and brothers who are doing the kind of work that you spoke of, Frank. But that's not what I do.
And I think we should be really upfront about that word, advocacy. We should be really clear about it, right? But I think what I've tried to get to is if a young person, as a result of educational programming, chooses to do something related to policy, our program was not advocacy. That's their choice to do whatever they do. As long as we're not pushing it, we're not doing it in the classroom, calling it education. I think that as long as we're really clear on what we're doing, but what I've noticed is actually the opposite, where we stay so far away from that possibility of touching action that we don't want to be tagged with advocacy, that we stay really far away from it. And actually does a disservice to our young people, because this came through, of all the things that came through the climate literacy listening sessions in March through May, was they want climate literacy to focus on solutions. Nothing was even close. And so, their version of climate literacy is very different than what we are historically doing. And so how do we do that and then not trip into advocacy and indoctrination and propaganda? We're going to have to be really good at this.
I think the line is to inform about solutions, but not push for any one. And
exactly.
I must say, with the En-ROADS, climate solutions workshops that I run, you can have a whole lot of different scenarios with a whole lot of different solutions. I even had I divided my class into two pieces, and I had one represent the conventional energy and had to come up with a suite of solutions that worked. And the other group was clean tech and climate justice, and I had them come up with a set of solutions. And then so that they could see that it was possible at both ends, but it required a whole suite of solutions, and it required compromises. Now you say, okay, now these two groups have to come together, because you can't implement both of these extremes at the same time. It's just not financially and manpower wise possible. So how do you address that tension? And the idea that you can inform about all of these different kinds of solutions without advocating for any of them. And quite honestly, a solution that may be implementable and here very quite effective here in Massachusetts might be not effective in Colorado. So that different groups are going to have to do different things. And that's not advocacy either. That's informing of the systems dynamics nature of the problem. Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. I think we as a group are very good at this, and let's keep being good at this. Is that we share with each other what we're each up to, and we want to be sure that we're at least aware if one of us starts to do something that causes grief or discomfort to the others, and then decide, do we have to do that? Can we shift and things like that? So I definitely want to do that and check with you, Tamara. In our choice of what we do and the words we use, Mobile Climate Science Labs, Climate Club DC, and the specific schools, one is we have classes on climate action. And they're elective classes, so they're not mandatory classes. They're elective classes, just as is a chess club or a African American club or all kinds of other clubs, right? That's the way students can choose what they want to do and places they want to do. But we are specifically taking certain actions as groups. And one of them is the energy efficiency ones. We have other ones coming up and so on. But but we do make the distinction. It's not so much saying to stay away from advocacy, but to make it clear that we do STEM-based actions that have a nature of workforce development. They have a way of technological development, of saving money, of using existing policy. We're not focused so much on changing policy or laws, but implementing those laws, not having them on the books and not be done. We are advocates we are working. So basically, Tamer, I'm running this all by you to see if there's anything that, us being in the clean network, does it make it difficult that some of us are doing what I'm describing? That we are, as an adult, I work to allow middle and high school students to be agents of change, to be taken seriously, to be listened to have authority, and not just have an opinion, not just have a poster, not just going to politicians, but having the authority where the Smithsonian looks at them as their energy consultants. That's important because they can do that. They can go into any Smithsonian, they can go to NOAA's headquarters and point out where there's lighting that's being wasted, because NOAA and Smithsonian want to change that. They're just helping the federal government do what they have. Or we work in the state of California because, America is a country, a federal country, where there's the federal government, but then there's these 50 states or 51 states, if we count DC, that each have their own experiment. Some parts of the country are going to work on energy efficiency. Others are going to hold kicking and screaming onto coal. And that's America. That's the way it works. But our schools are not about, we don't ever educate about a major career area or spending federal money. So anyway, sorry, Tamer, I'm just going on. Is the wording or the work we're doing kind of like, oh, we shouldn't, am I getting into a territory that we shouldn't be, that we're causing trouble by doing this?
Because what you're doing is, I'm assuming that the students have a choice to go and do this work in terms of talking to the various federal agencies. And it gives them experience to do that, so that then they have the choice and the experience to make that choice when they are out there in the world and are independent of the educational system and are making those choices for themselves. So I think that's education, and not, students need to have experience in order to be able to make those kinds of decisions for themselves later on.
Agreed. I mean, they're learning to be electrical engineers. They're learning to be, whether they want to be a tradesperson or electrician or a lawyer or, all kinds of things. And absolutely, it's an elective class, and they elect what they want to do, where they want to go. And it's real. And by the way, it's set up where it's kind of cool that the students, even if they say you're going to do it, they will do what they want to do. They get excited about what they want to do. And what they don't get excited about, they just don't do it. And that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, Frank?
So Tamara, you mentioned something about somebody mentioned something about a course, and it reminded me, I don't know how to say Tim and Gina and Katie, I'd love for us to follow up with Tim. I'm not going to try it. It's so I'm off, but I put a link in here. This guy, Tim, he's in Michigan, and he found this little entry point for high schools that is incredibly powerful, but it needs to propagate. And that is, with all the work we did to get climate into high school science education standards, we messed up something. And, and it wasn't us. It was the way that those standards, Earth and Space standards, moved in to the high school science courses. And they spread climate all over the place because they spread Earth and Space all over the place. So they have physics teachers, chemistry teachers, and biology teachers kind of teaching this a little bit. So they spread it all out, which diffused it. However, Tim's model actually solves a very important thing for high school, an important part of our education intervention. And that is that if you have an elective, science elective class, you're not limited to the state standards. That's a really important point. You're not limited to the science standards. So what that says is that, and Tim is leaving the classroom and he's going to study science elective courses. This model in the article he talks about in this article, he shared with me some guides that he's writing on how to set up an elective class on climate change for high school students. It can work in any school district in the 15,000. I think that, and what he found was that you can go cross disciplines in a much more dynamic way. You can go
when you say cross disciplines, do you mean beyond science?
Yes.
I
Right.
see.
It's kind of like you want to build a class that is like a capstone coherent class on climate change. Finally, we've heard in our community every now and then a student will finally get a true climate change class, but they get it at undergraduate, maybe their junior year of their college degree. And they're like, oh, this is what climate change is? Why didn't you tell me this like 5 years earlier? Because our content is spread all over the place. So Tim's model is incredibly powerful because it offers an opportunity. It's elective, which means, but what they found was in his teaching, students wanted this class more than any other elective because they finally had an opportunity to take a class in climate change. Now, you can change it around to different topics. On different names. But I think there's a very powerful thing in what Tim innovated. And I think, Gina and Katie, if we can get Tim to come and spend some time with us and present his model, it would be a powerful thing to do. And so I can share with you Tim's email.
Sounds great.
But it's something there.
And Frank agreed with that. I've talked with Tim quite a bit. I think we're all on the same. Absolutely, please, let's get him in here. He's doing great things. If there's anything I kind of politely said as Tim, the one problem I'm having the most of is that teachers who are really good on climate change end up not wanting to be a teacher anymore. They're so fed up with being a teacher, they move on to other things. Can't you stay as a teacher? But we kind of agreed. I'll stay as a teacher, and Tim, you work on the higher level. But let's get him in here. That's good.
Yeah, but what he's doing is getting his PhD in this.
Yep.
So he's still focused on education. He's not running from education. He's actually investing in it in a more focused way. But I just gave you the link gave Gina Tim's email. So let's see if we can get him.
But Frank, it's totally on the elective courses, because we're doing elective courses now, both in private school and public school, right? So it's getting the benefits of both, and they're absolutely it. We can cross disciplines. Nobody's twisting anybody's arms. Unless somebody in Oklahoma or Florida, some governor wants to tell people in DC, you're not allowed to teach science anymore about something that's valid and looking at that. I'm sorry, DeSantis, you have no authority over us.
Don't give him ideas.
Well, yeah. Well, on the other hand, we can get him way off track where he's like totally so off the base that if you're giving my opinion, but I'm not really talking to DeSantis anyway. But we're in total green light territory, and I'm not going to be afraid of running with what science tells us and what people want and what students want and what's the right thing to do as an educator. Again, we have 50 states. Each of our states are going to do what we think are important. Oklahoma doesn't want to do what California wants to do. Okay, fine, we agree.
Yeah, but But what's interesting, I hadn't hit me until just this moment. By going after the elective class, it puts a student in the position of, I am choosing to get educated.
You bet.
And now they're choosing to get educated on something that's important. There's no, you automatically, as soon as you go past the mandated, everyone must, you're going into elective mode. I think you can move into places where that's going to be a more challenging place because students are choosing, and you bypass that indoctrination challenge that shows up with climate change sometimes because of the elective route. So I'm even more excited about this innovation that showed up by Tim. So if we can get that moving, then all to the good.
Yeah. And Frank, just to give it of how much there've been clubs for a long time in school, but it's become much more popular. It's much bigger. They're much more diverse. They're all over. They're in the public schools and the private schools, and this is it. And again, it is a club that students want to take part of, and then they get to choose what they want to do within it. So totally agreed. But yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. I mean, that's kind of how Cleo's been operating. Is primarily through this sort of like after school club kind of model. We definitely, we go into schools and we call them our Climate 101 talks. We always ask the teacher ahead of time, is there anything in particular you want me to address or avoid? We tailor it to, maybe the subject they're teaching, the grade level, whatever unit they're on. But yeah, for the club, we do a lot of advocacy within that space, always in the context of education. And we kind of we kind of frame it, and James, this is kind of like what you were saying, how can you be against the government saving money? We frame it in terms of a lot of it community, like bettering your community. I've said before, if you're a flat earther but you like solar panels, I'll talk to you. So, and we have students who are saying, hey, all of these diesel buses, when they line up and drop all the kids off, it's hard to breathe in the drop-off area. There's a lot of pollution. I mean, yeah, we want to get away from diesel fumes for climate reasons, but also, you're listening to the kids literally say, I'm a student athlete and I'm concerned about my lungs. And when it's led by the students like that, when you really have it be like student led in that way, it's a lot harder to accuse you of, using them as puppets or telling them what to say, when it's just like, oh, like I wouldn't necessarily have made that connection to, say, athletics. I'm the least athletic person that you will ever meet. So yeah, that's also an option. And then they kind of bring their interests into the classroom and, can invite you there. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of student involvement from high school and college students. And some of it is through their schools where it's like an official school club. And some of it is, we do monthly statewide meetings on Zoom and meet up on campuses, and they can come or not as they choose.
And Carolyn, to run, if you don't mind, running with the after school or out of school or beyond school groups and things, please, you guys, I mean, nobody is telling me not to say this when I'm working with the Girl Scouts, is let's use the Girl Scouts. Is like, this is the Girl Scouts put out merit badges, right? They have thousands of merit badges. And what's their number one sought after merit badge? Climate action. The Girl Scouts are speaking. Oh boy, the Girl Scouts. There's, what do you call it? They said the people who do this work are fascist. Oh yeah, the Girl Scouts. That's what you call fascism. Okay, great. I think you've got a very false definition. So run with it. The Girl Scouts are going now.
Those same people. I don't know if you've heard. There's been a big brouhaha every year when they sell Girl Scout cookies, where they're like, you're like. They have some kind of involvement with like Planned Parenthood and like general like health and wellness and that kind of education, and they're just like if you buy Girl Scout cookies, you're funding abortions. Oh, Jesus Christ. So those people are gonna whine and complain and cause a fuss no matter what you do.
We should also know that, I mean, the Girl Scouts, and was just speaking of a whole lot, are also an example of there's a lot of election. the different troops, different regions, the different sections, they all have their characteristic across the country. That's recognized, and that's just the way it is. That's you know, in some parts nobody would, the merit badges, they don't do it or whatever. So that, but I guess maybe it also comes back to the lawsuit thing. The dam is breaking, and a lot of it's coming from young people over, you know, this thing of just clamping down and having it all be fossil fuels, and there's nothing being done, and we have to beg for everything. I think that dam is breaking, and that, you know, and again, the young people, I think, are playing a huge part of that role.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. It's been an interesting conversation. It is the top of the hour. And so we'll draw this conversation to a close. I appreciate everybody's contributions today. And we'll talk next time.
Thanks all. Thanks, Tamara.
See you
Thank
next
you.
week.